We're presented today in partnership with the 74 Million, which is a nonprofit news website and a go-to for all things education in the United States. I'm Tressa Pankovitz, co-director of the Reinventing America's Schools project, and I'm honored to facilitate this conversation today with a panel of experts on rural education and rural career pathways for high school students. We're going to be examining an important emerging trend called rural collaboratives, and we're going to look at them both in policy and practice. This webinar stems out of a research paper that I published in 2023. You can find that on the Reinventing America's Schools website on the Progressive Policy umbrella site. And that report fleshes out an innovative, autonomous high school model that was created in Texas, whereby originally 3, but now 5 counties, participate collaboratively to create more increased career opportunities and work-based learning for students in rural areas where it's generally hard to scale such programs. Any of the students from any of the 5 county high schools can attend these academies, and we're going to be hearing more about them today, along with what's going on in Colorado, which is also a state that is investing heavily in career-based learning and career-connected learning for high school students. I'd like to introduce my panelists. Joining me on the policy side today are Texas State Representative Brad Buckley. Representative Buckley is a Republican, currently serving his 3rd term in the House, in the Texas House of Representatives. He is the representative from District 54, which includes half of Bell County and part of Fort Cavazos in Central Texas. He is the chairman of the House Public Education Committee and the House Select Committee on Educational Opportunity and Enrichment. He is honored to lead on important policy that affects professional educators, the 5.5 million public school students in Texas, and their families. Chairman Buckley, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. You're also a veterinarian and you're sitting in your veterinarian office. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about the exciting policies you've helped to enact in Texas. Also today on the policy side, we have Colorado House District 61 Democratic Representative Eliza Hamrick. Colorado's 61st District is located in Arapahoe and Douglas counties and includes portions of Aurora, Centennial, and nearby unincorporated areas. Representative Hamrick is a retired educator who has won dozens of awards for her teaching talents and her fierce advocacy on behalf of public education and increasing equitable access to it for all students. Thank you so much for lending us your valuable insights today, Representative Hamrick. Now, turning to the practitioner side, we have Michael Gonzalez. Michael is the executive director of the groundbreaking EPIC Rural Schools Innovation Zone in South Central Texas that I previously mentioned. Originally designed as a partnership between 3 remote South Texas counties with 1 high school each, the RIS model has proven so successful and impactful that it now encompasses 5 partner districts, and it's served as the catalyst for the Texas state legislature to pass a funding stream so that the RIS could be replicated as a model in any other rural areas that meet certain criteria and have the same kind of needs for career-connected learning. And finally, last but not least at all, let me introduce Alyssa Morton, CEO and partner at Empower Schools, which is a national nonprofit with deep expertise in launching sustainable systems and structures. Empower has a huge portfolio of communities and school districts across the country that has guided in the type of work it took to launch RIS. And in fact, the Texas Education Agency selected Empower as an external third-party provider to help guide the facilitation of this model. Now, normally I would start with our elected officials out of deference to the importance of their offices, but today I'm going to start with Alyssa and ask her to define for us some of the problems rural areas have in providing career pathways for students so that they graduate not only college ready, but career ready and certificate ready, and that they have the skills needed to support families without necessarily having to relocate out of the communities where they were raised. So Alyssa, define the problem for us and tell our audience what we're trying to solve for here.
Sure. So rural communities have a couple of systemic challenges. The first is that it's harder for small rural schools to offer robust college and career pathways. So they have limited employer networks. There are fewer companies that they can partner with for work-based learning opportunities, fewer local higher education institutions. We've heard a lot about the struggles for rural community colleges, and they have smaller district budgets. And even when they do have funding, talent pipeline is a significant challenge. I talked to one of our rural community partners in the Permian Basin who had a welding job posted for 2 years with no applicants. So being able to recruit qualified educators, not just in core content areas, but also for career pathways is a real challenge. Rural students also tend to have fewer choices and lower rates of access to college and career counseling. So when you're a rural high school that only has a few hundred students, you have to decide, are you going to invest deeply in offering one pathway where students can achieve a credential of value, but many students wouldn't be interested in that particular pathway, so you're only serving a small subset of the school? Or do you offer a sampling of a lot of intro classes, lots of different possible pathways, but none of them ends up completing a credential of value? So those students are further behind their urban counterparts. And it's tricky because rural students have less access to college and career counseling. So 60% of rural high school students report having access to a counselor who talks to them about college and career opportunities, compared to 85% in urban schools. And when you offer rural students more options, you want to make sure that they have enough information and support to make informed choices among those options. And so what's happened in rural communities is that there ends up being an attainment gap. Rural workers earn less than urban workers, largely due to the lack of high-wage jobs available. And rural Americans are less likely to hold an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree compared to their urban peers. So those are really some of the problems that we think about. And what we do at Empower Schools is we work on breaking down those barriers by designing what we call rural collaboratives or multi-sector collaboratives, depending on the state, which is really based on the original design of the Rural Schools Innovation Zone that Mike leads. And so, based on what they've designed in South Texas, these collaboratives have now been codified through legislation. Here in Texas, where I live, the RPEP bill that the Texas legislature passed in 2023 allows students to have more access to high quality pathways and more choice among multiple pathways. To your point, Tressa, students from any one of those 5 districts can pick which pathway they want to attend. And all the pathways are aligned to high wage, high demand jobs in their local region. So they can pursue those jobs without leaving their community. It strengthens economic mobility for the students and local workforce development for the community. And so in Texas,
people don't realize how many rural students there are. I mean,
yeah,
we think of big school districts and big cities and teeming with children, but I just think that people probably don't really realize how many rural kids need this.
exactly. We have more than 600 rural districts here in Texas. And so we're talking about a lot of places in very different, demographic and political parts of the state.
So I'm going to turn to you, Chairman Buckley. Now, you are the chair of this committee. Tell us a little bit more in detail about the RPEP bill, what its goals are, and why you supported it, and what kind of support did it get across the Texas legislature?
Well, I think the first thing you have to look at the RIS and the success that they've had, and Mike's leadership there, and what they have accomplished. Is simply what all legislators, regardless of party or background, want to see. They want to see high career college military readiness attainment, high graduation rates, industry-based certifications, credentials of value, stackable credentials, even more dual credit exposure and dual credit completion. And so as a chairman of the committee, it's nice to have a bill that hits so many areas, because there are, those are areas we can all agree on. And in Texas, we know, because the district that I represent has school districts like where I'm sitting now in Killeen. There's about 44,000 kids in the school district. Oh, if you drive 25 miles to the east, I have a school district that has 400 kids. And so we've gone from an urban environment to very rural areas, and the access to the type of career and college ready programs that students need in these rural areas is often limited by the fact that they have trouble scaling things in our rural communities. We have additional funding for our smaller districts, but it doesn't really match the need or the ability to provide some programs that are expensive to stand up and operate. You spoke to workforce challenges and how do you get, the talent pipeline to get folks to teach kids there that bring that expertise there. That's a challenge. Man, when you can reach out and collaborate with your neighbors and then have a funded system that interconnects everybody, it's a great recipe. So I was really proud to have this bill come to the committee, to get it to the floor, and then enact it. And now this next session, we're looking at growing it even more. And we start January 14th, so we're ready to roll.
That's terrific. What would you like to see when you talk about the growth of the bill? Where would you like it to ultimately land?
Yeah, I want to take the cap off of it. We have a financial cap on it. We'll want to take the cap off to make sure there's more resources available, because this is, as I mentioned, this strikes at the heart of, I think, of why we do school. This is just so fundamental to why our teachers work as hard as they do, why parents often, and now what we're seeing in Texas is because of the way people work, we're seeing families seek a rural environment to live, but, they shouldn't have to give up some of the opportunities for their children that they have in the larger districts. And so when we look at the moment we're in Texas, I think it really matches well. And so we remove the cap. We want to continue to grow the programs, connect more. I think the challenge, though, will always be connecting our programs with business and industry that can provide those high-paying jobs with great wages. And that's that when I talk to administrators and school leaders, that's always the challenge, is how do we get this constant conversation between employers and our schools? It's easier said than done. Now Mike has the secret sauce on that, because I've heard him testify so many times, and he knows how to do that. And so we'll lean on him as always to kind of help us lead the way as this thing grows across the state.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that during the course of this webinar today. I want to turn to you, Representative Hamrick. Under Governor Jared Polis, Colorado is also making significant investments in expanding career-connected learning. And I have read that there is something like 2 open jobs for every available worker in Colorado. At the same time, there seems to be almost a dizzying array of initiatives, competitive grants, task forces designed to rectify the situation. Can you tell us what's important to know about what y'all are doing up there in Colorado?
Oh, you bet. Great, Tressa. And thank you so much for having me today. I'm learning a lot from Rep. Buckley and you all about how we can improve education for our kids in Colorado even more. So Governor Polis is a champion. He's really leading the sort of the big blur conversation, if you will, at the state level, and working to break down barriers between K-12, higher ed, and the workforce. In fact, I believe he was on the a podcast with you all recently as a panelist. So we're very fortunate to have him and his leadership. He's seen as one of the top sort of education governors in the country. So we're so lucky, especially with work-based learning and workplace readiness. He is 110% supportive of that. So I've done a lot of bills in that space, and I really value his leadership and his support. One action the legislature took was a cost study out of the 1215 task force to look at how the college and career programs and initiatives work together or don't, and how to streamline programs for better implementation on the school side and increase clarity on the student parent side. And we'll likely see follow-up action in the upcoming session. I have a bill, in fact, that looks at how credits are transferred from community colleges to big colleges, from high schools to community colleges. I also did what's called a career stacking bill with a few other legislators that's looking at ways of of stacking credentials so that they can be sort of compared to college degrees. It's a European system. We'll be the first in the country to do it. Colorado often is at, we call it at the bleeding edge, instead of the leading edge, the bleeding edge, because we have to be very creative here with how we do things, because we don't have as much money as others do as far as funding for education. We're also looking at longitudinal data system, potentially adding college and career activities to the school and district performance framework, which I'm really, really excited about, because I was a high school teacher for 32 years, and our schools and districts are evaluated based on many things, and they're really gonna increase the work-based learning and the workplace readiness grades. So you're going to get more points for what you're doing. Because I'll go to a school that might not have a lot of advanced placement classes, but they have got some amazing workplace readiness programs that are really preparing their students to be, to be very successful in their community, get into the middle class, and they need to be rewarded for that. They need to get good grades for that. So I'm really, really excited about that. And traveling all around the state, just looking at all the various workplace readiness programs, including in Fremont with Canyon City and Florence. These are amazing, amazing programs, and they need to get credit for that. These schools need to get credit for this on their school grades. And so that is something I'm very, very excited about. And I just want to push everything that's going on into ways that they could be honored for what they're doing. There's so much innovation happening in Colorado, especially in rural districts. Cross-district collaboration, like in Fremont, was sparked through those competitive grants like RISE, Rural Colorado Action, OEdit Opportunity Now, and we have an opportunity to sort of upscale them. Canyon City, which is a small city outside of Colorado Springs, is a national leader now in all the work-based learning programs that they promote, and it just fills my heart. And there's someone that we need to sort of emulate. So, the rurals have even less resources than the suburbs and the cities, and they're also at the bleeding edge, and they have to be very, very creative. And Adam Hartman, who is the superintendent of Canyon City, he's all about taking risks for his kids. We don't have a lot of money, but we get this. This should work. Let's try this, right? And so I was just blown away by that model.
Well, I think the next panelist I'm going to turn to here is somebody who knows a lot about systems not having a lot of money, and of course that's our very own Mike Gonzalez, who is one of the architects of the first rural collaborative in Texas. And if ever there was a place I had the honor to visit 3 times where there did not seem to have very deep resources and people live very, very modestly, it is in the area that Mike serves. So Mike, I'm just going to let you tell us all about what you're doing and how far you've come in the past couple of years.
Oh, thanks, Tressa. I appreciate the introduction, and formal thank you to Representative Buckley for his support and the last session, and I'm looking forward to his huge support in the upcoming session. We wouldn't be here without the support of our legislators for sure, and Empower Schools, the things they've done for rural education in Colorado and the state of Texas has been phenomenal. So the Rural School Innovation Zone, what does it look like to be in a day-to-day situation? It's phenomenal for our students. That we firmly believe, and we stand firm, that our zip code, area code should not determine the academic success of our students. And we've had 5 innovative leaders really hone into that and provide opportunities for our kids that otherwise would not be there. There is no way that any one of our school districts, as small as they are, and struggling with budgets and everything, and maintaining what Alyssa said, the employability of CT teachers and just core area teachers, period. So they could not survive on their own and provide these opportunities for our kids that deserved it. So coming together, they formalized the zone in 2019, and we provided some specialized academies that deal with our traditional, and I use traditional in quotations only because they make a lot more money than I do, as far as electricians, welders, construction workers, HVAC operators, heavy equipment operators, and we house that in Valparaiso High School, which is Brooks County ISD, one of our founding fathers, going from there. and then we go an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 27 minutes in a Yellow Dog, kind of northwest of File, we go to our very prominent Health Science Academy that's housed in Freer High School, where our kids graduate with an EKG, phlebotomy, patient care tech, and certified medical assistant. I was just sharing with Alyssa and Representative Buckley earlier that we have 8 semesters in a row of our kids passing their national certification exams, and these are the same students that are struggling, just to make it through the school year, and just to make it past graduation. That we 24% of the class of 22 that passed the certification exams were special pop students. So we take a huge smile in knowing that we're doing the best we can for the kids that we have in front of us, right? There's no open application. There's nothing. There's no parameters there. We want to take all kids and provide them an opportunity that otherwise they would not have. So they've done extremely well over there. The nurses are kid magnets. We're very blessed and fortunate to kind of be the anomaly that Lisa talked about. We now have 4 certified nurses, 2 RNs, 2 with BSN certifications, 1 with a master's, that are actually homegrown nurses, right? And not very many people can say that, but we're lucky to do that. Some of the things that Representative Buckley talked about, in our testimonies, to lure in these kind of CT professionals, we as school districts don't do enough to accentuate the promises of a school calendar and what that does, right? Being off a whole week of Thanksgiving, the 2 to 3 week Christmas break, a spring break. If you are a worker and you're doing all those different things, and you're an oil field welder, you've missed kids' birthdays. You've missed, Christmases. You've missed all these wonderful events, and I love it because my welding instructors say, "Sir, we haven't missed a birthday party in 3 years." We haven't missed a Thanksgiving. So those are some of the things I think on the school district side, we need to do a much better job of luring in those industry-based people into those jobs. So then we travel another hour and 15 minutes due east of Freer into Fremont. And if you don't know the Fremont story, it's an amazing story. 9 consecutive years of not meeting state standard. Very fortunate to walk in the beginning of the turnaround project that was led by Mr. Singleton. Hired a very amazing, innovative leader, Steve Van Matry, and propelled the district to be a B district after that, and continues to be a B district. But they house some very innovative academies. They do our Grow Your Own Teacher Academy, which now we have a promise, a zone promise, that any one of our 5 school districts that attend and graduate with their certification and 4-year degree from our regional university or any university come back and have priority bonus points to get a job back in one of our rural school districts, right? And what better way to really hone and clone the future than having those kids do their practicum at our local school districts, right? And try to teach them that there's so many more ways to learn and invest in the future of our kids. And the sophomores, juniors, and seniors that we have, freshmen that we have in our program right now, they're taking over. I'm getting phone calls from principals saying, "Hey, sir, today is a GYO day, and we're short on subs. Is there any way that we can just put an adult in there and let your student run the class?" And we have video on that. We have our kids have taken and honed in on ownership of the classroom, to a point where first year teachers are not getting extra support from our kids, right? We're giving them a couple of more hours of the practicum within those that realm of teaching every single day. And then we have our STEM Discovery Zone at Fremont, which deals with GIS, cybersecurity, robotics, unmanned aerial flight, and that program is just taking off, right? It's just starting out, but it's really taking off with some of our kids and resonated extremely well. We have the King Ranch right next door to us, in a biggest ranch in the world, and we're looking forward to collaborating with them for some possible jobs with the drones and those things going forward. So all 5 of our districts do extremely well individually, but collectively we were so much better. The data proves it. We have 96% of our kids graduating. We've quadrupled the amount of dual credit opportunities for our students. 52% of our seniors last year graduated with an IBC, a credential of value, and those things. So we're really hitting the mark on a lot of things that hone well with people like Representative Buckley. They're looking for the bigger picture, right? What can a little model like the zone do to enact that? So we're taking those situations, that things that you have in South Texas. There are 3 things that you really don't talk about, and there are 3 C words, right? the first one is cancer. We don't want to talk about that situation, unfortunately, and then we don't want to talk about consolidation. This is public school choice at its best, allowing our kids to keep their school identity, community identity, but attend other academies and other school districts, and revitalize, and come back home and not lose anything in that community. And then the other C word is charter, right? We want to try to stay away from that as much as possible, and in South Texas only. I don't say about the rest of the area, but our communities are so small that they're so vibrant as far as that community pride. So the zone model is a pack and play situation, and Representative Buckley and the support of the legislators has allowed us to do that, right? Allow us to promote the model and take it to a different level. And we're excited to see the opportunities roll up in Texas.
So, Mike, I want to follow up with you. I just wanted to share a comment that somebody put in the chat there in case people aren't looking. He says, I can attest to Mike's point about students leading class sessions. The last time I was in Brooks County, I met a student and I thought she was the welding instructor. And from having visited all of the campuses that Mike just talked about 3 times, which was such an honor and such a great learning experience for me, I can attest to the abilities of the young people. They're very confident, very self-assured, even if they're a little shy sometimes. But Mike, just real quick, I know that anybody that is watching this is thinking, wow, it sounds great. They're also probably thinking there's no way we could afford to do this in our state or our area. Can you just briefly explain the funding model?
Yes, ma'am. So
And some of the resources that you have been able to tap into to make this all possible and sustainable.
Yes, ma'am. The beginning was, heavily grant funded. Unfortunately, fortunately for us, the state allows us to utilize grants to help redesign, and do some things that restructure our school districts. And unfortunately, we had some campuses that were involved with the zone that were improvement required. Were considered an school district. So we had some school action fund money, school redesign money to start up the process of building up the rural school innovation zone. After 2 years of grant funds, with the help of TA Commissioner Marath, we were dealt a financial analyst to help build what we call our tuition funding model, based on the career technology education allotment funds that are dispersed to our school districts. So we've used the participation numbers within each academy and utilize a CT funding model derived from our state to allow us to pay basically for the services, salary services, supplies and materials for our five school districts. So it's helped us sustain what we're doing. It hasn't allowed us to grow, but with RPEP and Hospital 2209, we're taking that to a completely different level, in the next few years, and we're really excited about the future of rural collaboratives and the future of the zone and the impact that 2209 is going to have on us for sure.
Isn't there Perkins money involved too?
Yes, Mr. Russell, we've been very, very blessed and fortunate with Perkins Reserve Cohort 1 through 4 money and continuation money to sustain and mold our academies. Again, for whatever reason, the man upstairs bestowed a lot of blessings on us to have some of that money in the millions to allow our students those opportunities. We have 3 antenna tables that run about $85,000 in our Health Science Academy. We have local community colleges that are running nursing programs that don't have one on their campus. So again, our kids are very blessed. Our 5 school districts, our 4 counties are taking full advantage of that, and we're looking to take it to a different level, right? We're looking to incorporate some adult ed situations also in our districts to allow to our communities to thrive. Once our communities start dying, and our people start leaving our small rural communities, our communities die. We want to be sure we enact, solutions to those problems and allow our students as well as our adults to have some opportunities for success in the future. And I think with all this alignment and stuff, it's going to allow us to do that.
And I am sure that you would be more than willing to share some of your innovative ideas and funding models and stuff with any educator that's watching today that is thinking, wow, we've got a lot of rural land here in Oregon, or we've got a lot of rural land here in West Virginia, because I'm sure there are people that will watch this because it's being recorded and think, we could never be able to do that here. And I think you have that kind of can-do spirit. And I know Alyssa, it's her life's work as well, that people can reach out for some thoughts and advice.
Well, Mr. Tressa, you sat with me in enough bus rides to know that I say this word all the time. You know, the model is a pack and play situation. It's going to take a little bit of grit and determination from the leaders on the district side to walk a very thin line, right, and not be scared for barriers because Representative, Hamrick and stuff, we're a technical assistance provider for South Central BOCES and talking to their superintendents and trying to guide them in the right direction to establish that, rural collaborative in Colorado. So we're always here, Mr. Tressa, you know that. And like I said, it's a pack and play model. I firmly believe in what we're doing right now and what we're doing for the future of our kids.
Rep Hammer, can you tell us what Mike just referenced? Are you familiar with that
The rural
initiative?
collaboratives?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I visited in Fremont County, and the rural collaborative is this amazing model where districts share resources with each other. So the one I saw was Canyon City district, and then you have like the Florence area, and then you have two other smaller districts, and they share resources. So if you are a student that's interested in like animal husbandry or botany or whatever, they have vans that they buy. Because I'm like, how do you transport? Because transportation is critical to making sure that this school choice thing works. If you don't have transportation, there's no choice, right? So they have these vans that take the kids from like Canyon City to Florence so they can do like botany or animal husbandry. But if you're from the Florence area and you want to do, welding or aerospace or other things, you go to Canyon City or you go to the two other neighboring. So it makes so much sense because that way they can specialize in these areas and they share resources. I think that's such a great model. Colorado's coming up to like close to $1 billion deficit for our funding source for just our state next year. And so this is such a critical model that we really need to look at, is the sharing of resources, provided that we have transportation, because that's so key.
Absolutely. I haven't seen your buses, but I observed the kids actually on the buses that they use in Mike's district, and they're Wi-Fi enabled. So theoretically they can be doing homework or studying. While we're talking about money, Chairman Buckley, I want to ask you, what is the reaction in Austin to the proliferation of these districts? I don't know exactly how many they are. I'm sure Alyssa could tell us right off the top of her head, but I know there's a lot of places that are clamoring for this, and I know that there are members of the business community that are clamoring for the additional skilled workers for what is needed. Is the funding stream going to be able to meet the demand in Texas?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the model speaks to so many of the concerns that legislators have in the communities they represent. And Mike spoke to this. One of the things we're concerned about in rural Texas is you tend to see a lot of kids grow up there, and then they've had to leave that area to go work elsewhere. But I mean, when you think about what they're doing in the RIS, one of the other things that's a limiting factor for rural Texas to grow and to prosper is you have to have quality education for families. You have to have health care. They're literally growing their own in those sectors, which is positive, really reinforcing the lifeblood of that community. And then I think the other thing that's happening in Texas that really begins to shift and change the opinion of legislators is that welding, the trades, the construction science, and these things, people are beginning to realize that the average plumber that shows up to their house in Texas is 58 years old, my age, and we're not going to work forever. And so, and the jobs and the entrepreneurship available with some of the skills that kids are learning are, unbelievable ways to build wealth for a family and stability and those things. And so, what I love seeing is that we have, and even in the RIS, you have very rigorous college-ready course of study. And then you have career-ready things that are that some of them are high tech and they're healthcare related and all that. But we also have career related things involving the trades, and so it really matches sort of the mix of what you'll need and what Texas will need in terms of employers. And let's think about artificial intelligence facilities. They are located in rural Texas. When you look at where they're going and the brain power it takes to operate and to work and to service those facilities is going to be another opportunity for rural Texas. I love rural Texas. I live in rural Texas. I can't imagine living anywhere else. Not as rural as some of the places in the Riz, but we what I love about the issue is we all come together in the Texas House, and there are parts of this program and this really innovative thinking that everyone latches onto because it reflects someone they represent directly. And that's why I think we'll be successful in expanding the program, pulling the cap off, and providing more resources. And you have the Riz that's showing, look what we do. This is where politically you need someone to say, this works. And here's how it works. You don't have to do it exactly like this, but here's a really good model.
Right.
And so I think that's why we'll be successful.
So, not to ask you too politically loaded of a question, but I know the hot topic in Texas these days is the governor's voucher push. How does that work with what you're seeing at the Riz and these other districts that are seeking to replicate the Riz?
I think I've even heard it on this webinar today. It's another form of school choice.
Right.
And when you talk to rural Texans, a lot of times they understand there is not a proliferation of private school education in rural Texas. But the reality is we need to have a model where families there can exert the same type of school choice for their children, where parents can be in control of kind of guiding students and their opportunities in a choice model. This is simply a public school choice model in a sense and I think Representative Hamrick made a great point. Without transportation in rural Texas, you're just talking, because we talk about it all day long, but kid can't get there, and so that is a key piece. I am 100% for school choice. I believe that parents need every tool in the toolbox. In rural Texas, parents need those same tools. It may look a little different in rural Texas than it will in the suburbs and the urban areas. But this is a key piece of keeping rural Texas strong and continuing to make it a wonderful place to raise a family. Rural Texas is special. Well, every Texan says that, but it just is.
I'm gonna interrupt you, and forgive me for interrupting you as an elected official and chairman. I grew up in San Francisco. I spent most of my adult life in Chicago. I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C. right now. I loved visiting the Riz. I went back 3 times. And as they say, there's a whole lot of nada between one place and another. I can see why people really love that part of our beautiful country. And I'm so grateful to Alyssa for bringing me into this conversation and this learning experience. And it's my privilege to share it. Here at Progressive Policy Institute, our tagline is radically pragmatic. And the 5 years that I've worked here and the many education models I've studied all over this country, including Hawaii, I haven't seen anything quite as pragmatic as this model and the model that you're now replicating in Colorado, Rep. Hamrick. And so that is a perfect lead in for me to turn back to Alyssa, who's been a little bit left out of the conversation, and say, are you getting more interest in this? Is this report helping? Is this webinar helping other places learn and see that there are pragmatic solutions to their workforce needs and to creating good paying jobs for kids who might not have a whole lot of opportunity otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, when people hear about this model, it makes a lot of sense, and it can be adapted to the local context of any place in America. And so it looks different in Indiana, in New Mexico, in Colorado. But the, general parameters are the same. It's multiple districts partnering together. They have the benefit of an intermediary like the Rural Schools Innovation Zone. Sometimes it's a regional service center, sometimes it's a local nonprofit, sometimes it's a university partner. But they're able to share college and career pathways, bring in higher education and employers. And we've even seen, in Indiana, they have fewer employer partners. Representative Buckley said one of the hardest things is to get employer partners. They have student-run businesses where students are getting meaningful work-based learning experience as entrepreneurs because they didn't have as many companies that could hire them. And so the students are running storefronts, they're running a TV studio, and it provides them with the kinds of training that are going to prepare them for the jobs of the future, whether they exist in those communities yet or not. The hope is that, to your point, companies are coming and they need talented workforce. And so I think what we're seeing all across the country is that there's interest in the rural collaborative model. And it's in places that have been traditionally left behind by lots of the education innovation ideas. You often see those things being implemented in big cities, but they're not adaptable to rural communities. This is designed for rural communities by rural communities. And so we're seeing it take off quite a bit. And I give huge credit. Different states have come in with different entry points. State agencies have played a big role offering planning grants. The governor's office, workforce development agencies are offering grants to districts to pursue the model. State legislatures are allocating funding as additional allotment dollars. And so, there are a lot of places that this can start in a state. But we're starting to see more people, one example of how interest is growing is just last year, we had hundreds of people visit a rural collaborative. And so, Tressa, you mentioned you've been, Representative Hamrick, you've been, right? There's lots of people who want to see this in action and understand kind of how can we bring these lessons back to my community and make sure that we're learning from what's happening across the country. And the collaborative leaders are learning from one another too. And so, Mike, I'd be curious, but like everybody's learning from Mike. And I think Mike is taking some things from other places too, who are, adapting the model in different ways. And so it's all, making each other stronger.
Well, one thing I will say, and I'm gonna let Mike address what you just said, but I will say is that my most recent trip, if I remember correctly, we visited one in, was it Odessa?
The Permian Basin, yeah.
Permian Basin, right. And you could really see the difference between the fledgling and the more mature RIS that Mike is running. And it was exciting to see because the RIS was pretty up and running when I started visiting. And this one was really at the very, very beginning. And it was just a very different experience to see it. So fledgling, but it was exciting to see both ends of the spectrum. And I know Mike is so generous with his time. If there's anybody that's watching this webinar or comes across the recording later, I'm sure he'd be happy to give you a tour. And Mike, Alyssa had kind of asked you a question about what you've learned from other places.
Well, I mean, Ms. Tressa, we take a lot, we've had almost 4,000 people walk through the halls of the zone, through our school districts and those things. So we're really excited. We love to host, and we use the Indiana trip as our gold standard, right? Those individuals brought, district leaders, they brought community leaders, state leaders, county leaders to the forefront of that trip. So there was some heavy decision-making opportunities that were there after a debrief, right? So we've kind of patterned our host visits after what we saw with Indiana because it was so impactful to see them have that collaboration and that heated discussion at times about some of the barriers, right? Representative Hammer, we talked about transportation in Indiana, right? So my dad's a bus driver. I love him to death, and may he rest in peace. And so it's one of those situations. I grew up on a bus. I grew up in rural ed the entire time. My high school was 25 minutes away from my hometown. So when I got on the bus to take the furthest trip in Indiana, which was 28 minutes, I was like, what? We're already here. This is the furthest trip. So there are always little barriers that people want to talk about, but there are things that can happen. And using the Indiana model to help us host, talking to the Permian Basin and the Falls County Collaborative, TJ over there in the Falls County does an amazing job of guiding me and helping me out in some of the things that I lack expertise in, right? And dollar signs is one of them, right? So I didn't want to say it in front of Chairman Buckley, but I need other people to help me make sure we do everything for sustainability and going forward. But you take away something, Tressa, from everybody that visits the zone, right? Something from our student-run businesses that we want to start incorporating as our next academy, and the entrepreneurship and those things. So there's always something to learn. And yes, I am available as much as I can be to anybody that wants to come down. We have a couple of different visits already planned for the spring. We love, Representative Buckley's group to come on down. We definitely want to host that group for sure. At any point in time for them to come down and see what's going on. But it's an amazing situation for sure to come down here and yeah, we take a little bit from everybody and try to make it a little bit better. And I think we've done that over the last 6 years.
Representative Buckley, have you visited yet?
Not.
Well,
I've been all over the state. We had a very long. We had 4 special sessions. We meet for 140 days every other year, but we went 246 this time, and it made it difficult to get out too much. But we will certainly plan a visit and get down there and see it for ourselves.
well, don't tell anybody that I told you this, but try to go at lunchtime.
Oh, that one. No, we'll definitely do that.
So Mike, what's the next big thing on the horizon for the Riz?
More opportunities, Ms. Tressa, for our kids. Like I said, we've really thought about, the student-run businesses. Freer Superintendent Mr. Cantu has visited Roscoe in the past, and it's something that Roscoe ISD, so something we're trying to push as far as any kind of innovative models that we can go forward, right? Entrepreneurship is at the hub of everything, right? And we can develop an innovative educational model to infuse the transformation of all of our academies, and building that entrepreneurship link would be phenomenal, right? Somebody that's pretty close to you, Celeste Garcia, is wants to plan on opening up her own business before it's all said and done. Can you imagine her at 19 years of age opening up her own, welding shop, and learning how to all the intricacies of having to run it correctly and those things, coming right out of high school with her associate's degree. So those are that's the next transformation, and making sure we're doing what we're doing. Been very fortunate that all of us are either implementing or trying to sustain a P-TECH model, which can allow for sustainability for our kids in year 5 and year 6. Something that, it's a national model, but something we're really trying to hone into. Very fortunate that Fremont ISD actually had the first group actually take advantage of a year 5 model this summer, and we'll have 3 of those welders graduate in the fall with their associate's degree, right? Well, less than a year after they left us from the warm confines of our brick and mortar of Fremont Collegiate High School and the Ignite Academy. So just trying to reformulate and rethink those things. And I'll tell you, Tressa, you've been down here enough, and you've seen some of the problems. You heard some of the problems in the very beginning when we first started. The idea of a rural school innovation zone taking over a campus in the year 1, in year 2, and year 3. We had to go to the local school boards. It was a 4-3 vote in 2 of my districts. I'm a principal of 20 plus years, and I was waiting for June to figure out if I had a job for the next school year, right? Which is a little bit disheartening for my family, trying to figure out, with so many years of experience, if I could continue on in the job that we're doing. Very fortunate and very blessed that our teachers and our kids rose to the occasion. In year 3, we had the data to definitely allow our local school boards to give us a 2-year contract with them going forward. And now with RPEP, it's just rolling. The amount of momentum that we've received going forward has been phenomenal. Allowed us to hire an extra person in the zone. Mr. Rick Reese is our newest member. He was boots on the ground in the first year of the zone, and he's just been a phenomenal asset, taking the lead on a lot of things that are going forward, and allowing me to break away from the usual day and be part of a panel like this. So transformation is a big deal for us going forward. Utilizing the RPEP model and P-TECH and early college high school is a big deal. And we're just trying to hone in on all those resources that the state of Texas provided for us, and make sure that my superintendents know we're doing the right thing. We're in a phenomenal place. 5 superintendents, 3 of them pretty brand new to the zone, all rolling in the same direction, the same speed right now. So if I can't take this to a different level, Mr. Stress, I'm going on record, I will personally leave in the next year, right? Because we're doing things right. We're doing things right, and I'm really blessed that we have district leaders that are buying into what we're trying to go do. We fast forwarded pre-registration, something that we did in March and April. We're going to be done by February 1 this year. So we can make a very good budget and a bold prediction on budget and numbers for the 25-26 school year. We've quadrupled the amount of kids in the Next Generation Medical Academy in 2 years. Okay, so we're up to 162 kids that are enrolled over there right now. Our certification classes, we have one certification cohort per test. We're going to be up to four sections per test starting next school year. So it's just the
And
amount of.
For those in the audience who obviously have not visited, what they did was they took an old home ec kitchen classroom. So it kind of had like bays that used to be the little individual home ec kitchens where the kids would learn culinary skills. And they created this old school kind of 1950s feeling home ec room into a model hospital floor with bays with patients and rubber arms for learning how to do phlebotomy and draw blood. And the kids, they didn't automatically get scrubs. They had to be in the program and stick with it for a year before they were allowed to earn the right to wear scrubs, which was a really big deal for them. And these kids, they would do the certificates and they would graduate. They are graduating with 4 medical certificates. So like one junior I talked to on one of my trips, she had already earned her phlebotomy certificate, certification. So her part-time job after school was working, drawing blood. And I mean, it was, I forget what she was earning an hour, but it definitely wasn't your typical fast food minimum wage kind of paycheck. And she was helping support her family with that and was going to help use those skills to pay for her to go and get her nursing degree. One other girl got into, where did she go? She's up in San Antonio, Incarnate Heart. It's a Catholic school.
Carnivore Word, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Incarnate Word, and she's on a medical scholarship. So it's really quite something. And you were talking about the politics of it. You have quite different politics, Rep. Hamrick, in Colorado because you have very strong teachers union. And I know that there's a lot of tug of war over charter schools and innovation zone schools in Denver. How do you see this type of pragmatic career connected learning fitting into the political landscape in Colorado, which is so different than the political landscape in right to work state, Texas?
Yeah, that's a great question. In Colorado, the vast majority of our bills, like close to 90+% of our bills are bipartisan, which is often a surprise. Sometimes when you speak with constituents and Colorado people, they'll be like, "Oh, politics is all messed up." And I'm like, "No, not in Colorado. Like we get along. We know what's ultimately most important." And with education and with work-based learning, that's something that is a bipartisan concern. Both sides can get behind it because, as was stated by Rep. Buckley and Mr. Gonzalez, a lot of, especially our rural areas, they need to start growing their own. They're plumbers, they're nurses, they're welders. Some of our industries, like Spaceport in Adams County, pretty much ground to a halt. They don't have welders. They need welders, right? Wow. And so this is a bipartisan thing where industry and education, teachers, students, parents, we're all sort of figuring out how to best serve our kids in our communities. And so very much bipartisan. And because of the big looming budget deficit, we're trying to figure out how to streamline things, right? So there's a ton of like grants and other types of things that we've passed over the years, but some aren't working very well. So there are groups that are looking at, if you will, grant audits, like looking and figuring out which ones work, which ones don't. And I'd like to also say that grants are lovely, but rural schools don't have grant writers. And so you got to figure out, if you're going to have a grant as a state, you've got either have to provide a grant writer or something, right? You've got to figure that out because wealthier districts have grant writers, rurals don't. And so you got to figure out how to help them get this. So we're going to be looking at that as well. So because of the looming budget deficit, streamlining is of utmost importance. And so some of the things that I'd like to see streamlined are how CTE educators are certified. Right now, they have to do all this stuff just to get into the classroom, right? Also, I'd like to see more and more of these collaboratives, because we have to share what we're doing. Again, you just get the transportation piece in there, but you've got to, you can't have two aerospace programs like in neighboring. It just doesn't make any sense, right? You got to sort of concentrate and share among both the rural schools and the suburban schools and all that. So that's why I think sort of this rural collaborative is so very important, especially in times of budget tightening, because we really need to do this. And I also want to say that it's so very important that we tell elementary kids about the skilled trades and about this viable path to the middle class, because elementary kids need to learn about being an electrician, being a plumber, being a welder, also being a doctor and being an astronaut. Great, all that, right? But they need to know that, and they need to enter high school basically understanding that they need to graduate so they can get this really great job, right? Or go to college or go into the military. But we've really got to make sure that they hear about it at elementary, starting in elementary. And states like Iowa and Nebraska my understanding is, they do a really good job of doing all this sort of career stuff all throughout the schooling. So it's not just high school where you're like, hey, you could be a plumber if you do, right? Like they heard about it in third grade, right? And they thought it was really cool. And you're talking about artificial intelligence, and also sort of interesting ways of learning where you can sort of be on a job site remotely and learn how to operate machinery. They do that at Epic Campus in Littleton, where they can actually get on the screen and learn how to operate machinery. So they actually get hours for that. So once they graduate, they're closer to getting a really great job as a truck driver or whatever. And so there's all these really great things. And as you mentioned before, we have so many jobs that aren't filled yet. We have business and industries that are just pleading for people in the skilled trades. So just kind of pushing that through. Again, it is an incredibly bipartisan push in our state, because we all, both Democrats and Republicans, realize this is how you support your families and your communities, is through strong education that is linked very, very tightly with business and industry.
You were able to get bipartisan support, weren't you, Chairman Buckley, for this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
That remain?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is, I would speak to Texas the way you spoke about Colorado. The 3% of things we disagree over make the headlines, and it looks like it's a free for all, but in reality, it's quite a bipartisan process on the House floor, day after day after day. When we're talking about things like this, and Representative Hamrick made a great point about grant writers and things, is that in Texas, there are rural superintendents that drive a school bus as well, that teach a class, that do what other duties as assigned, right? And so a lot of the things, and I'm guilty of this, that we've advocated for, that get pushed out of the legislature are implemented very, very quickly in our urban and suburban districts, because they just have the human capital to do it. Rurals are like, wait a minute. So with RPEP, one of the other things we need to make sure is we need to make sure that our service centers are equipped with the ability to sort of help districts navigate this. Because if we don't, they just don't, they're just doing school. And you got to have some folks that can relieve our leaders to think and to collaborate and to visit with industry partners and all of that, or do it for them on their behalf. And so I think that's one of the things we really want to make sure that we strengthen this session in Texas, and the grant writing part, Representative Hamrick, that is a very, very good point, and it very important.
Yes, I agree. And, all I want for Christmas is for this to be the bipartisan issue of our time, because we need something as a country that we can agree on. And this is something that we don't just agree on because it feels good, but because it affects the very fabric of society everywhere. Every state has rural communities. I don't see why this couldn't even be adopted amongst low-income districts who don't, in urban settings that don't have the money, or even suburban settings that don't have the money to scale up career and technical. And I mean, there's just absolutely no downside to it. So, well,
That's a great point. I mean, just, and Representative Hamrick mentioned it. I mean, even in our areas that aren't, and I know we're focused on rural, but sometimes it doesn't make sense for this district to be doing the same thing and both operating at half capacity. I mean, we wouldn't do that anywhere else. There are equipment that other veterinary clinics have in my community where I will send patients over there because it doesn't make sense for me to have it. And if we can begin to think like that, this can be a real pragmatic solution to making sure there's more opportunity for kids in a manner that we can afford. And then those dollars can pay our teachers more, and they can invest it in other things. And so it's a matter of not duplicating a lot of services. And so anyway, I'll be quiet now.
No, that is an excellent possessiveness, and just kind of say, what did our mom teach us when we were 5? You got to share, right? And it's reciprocal, right? And our tagline, I'll say it again, is radically pragmatic, and this is the most pragmatic model that I've seen since I've been working in this business. So we are at time, but there's a question about, someone wanted to see some of the data that Alyssa had shared at the very beginning about rural schools. She will have more, but there is some in my report. I encourage everybody to go to Progressive Policy Institute, look for the little Reinventing America's School tab up there, and you'll find that. And it's really a roadmap to what Mike's doing on a daily basis. And he has put his contact information in the chat. So if anybody wants to reach out directly to him for questions, I want to thank everybody for being here. I hope you all felt like you got a chance to be heard. It was so much information to share. Thanks again to the 74 million nonprofit education news website for co-partnering, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.